former presidential candidate on the platform of the African Action Congress, AAC, Omoyele Sowore. Sowore, welcome to the morning show.
Thank you so much for bringing me back.
Again, for a man who ran a presidential race,
yes,
you look relaxed.
Yes.
What was your experience like, and what are your next steps?
It was a great experience, and it's something that we have to make into several formats. Hopefully, we plan to do a documentary about our experience, and maybe we'll write a lot about it too, in all forms, because it's very important that we ran some of the best campaigns, and even as the elections were rounded off and they had to allocate votes, they gave us some of the best votes from the youth bloc, as we like to call it. So that shows clearly that, everybody came to the appreciation that we ran a fantastic campaign. So next plan is to really, really start talking to people, our generation, to take the bull by the horn, not to be complacent, not to be afraid, to understand that for this country to achieve the greatness that we all talk about, something drastic has to be done. What I find very interesting is, the buyer's remorse. They haven't even sworn in the people who won the election, and everybody is regretting already. But we can't keep regretting for another 4 years. We have to do something very critical about Nigeria. Otherwise, Nigeria is slipping away before our very eyes.
What would you say was the biggest surprise for you? I mean, this election was seen as a referendum of President Buhari's first term, which was plagued by insecurity, a dwindling economy, but he got 15 million votes. I mean, that does say a lot, despite promises and hopes from candidates such as yours.
Well, you want to ask if there was an election in which, or if there was a collation process in which they allocated votes to themselves. And I can say to you categorically as a candidate that I didn't experience what could be remotely referred to as an election. You can't call what happened on February 23rd an election. It was just an act of aggression against Nigerian people by very well-known political operators in the system. That is why I said earlier that we have to do something drastic about Nigeria, so that the definition of democracy and the processes of democracy will be something that we can actually attest to in our own institutional life here. What happened in February is not democracy. It's nothing near a democratic process. It was, yeah.
The last time you were on this program,
yes,
with your campaign manager,
yes,
you said you were running an ideas-driven campaign.
That's right.
You were not distributing money.
Yeah.
But we saw you went around the country, you mobilized young people and all of that. How costly was it for you, even if you had a GoFundMe thing on the internet? Did you lose money, or you ended up making money from people who eventually came to support you?
No. We came out and asked for people to support us, and every cent we made, every kobo, every dime we made from it, we reinvested back into the campaigning process, and we campaigned everywhere in this country. We have sufficient evidence to show that we went everywhere. In fact, we went to some of the roads least traveled in Nigeria. You can't believe that I was in Zamfara State twice campaigning, including going to the border areas. We went past places that a few weeks later became killing fields. We traveled to about 34 states. I said this so many times. So we didn't see it as loss of money. We spent about, close to 160 million naira that we raised in the campaign. But that's chicken change compared to our competitors. That's probably, the money some of the big parties will spend in one rally in a state. Just one rally is what it will consume even more.
But did you also have to buy votes on election day?
No, come on. We had no reason to buy votes. It was like, it was ideas, everything we did was driven by fresh ideas. And you saw that after the election, some of the ideas are becoming global ideas. Yesterday, people were sending me stories from Uganda about, marijuana. Uganda is now exporting marijuana to Canada. I won't. Yesterday also, there was a topic that was trending about 2012 when Senegal gave up on its Senate. Just so that they can reinvest the money in social services. And those are so many of the ideas that drove our campaigning throughout that period that we're talking about. So people are starting to understand that, you know, these ideas are not just ideas that we pull from the heart, because they were things that were fully discussed in town hall meetings and rallies across the country.
Indeed, fresh ideas, because you created an impression that you and your party were against the old order and that nothing good can come out from the APC.
Yes.
But let me take you to Rivers State, where your party was endorsed by the APC in the governorship elections. How did you come about that?
No, we had no hand in it, and we made that very clear. The party leadership was not aware of the kind of rapport that existed between the candidate and the APC operators. And even the APC eventually came out and said it wasn't an APC thing. It was, I think, Amechi who wanted to fight Wike, and they found a willing candidate in the AAC candidate. And we immediately issued a statement. I also went on BBC to say that we're not part of that. So that's not the kind of relationship we wanted. It was our belief that our candidate could win on merit, and there was no need to be in any form of alliance or with APC or whichever faction of the APC you want to talk about in Rivers State. So we were not part of it at the national level, and we made that clear.
But we probably would have expected that the party, apart from disowning him, would suspend him. No, and accuse him of anti-party activities.
We have a process for doing that, and that will still happen. You know, you just don't wake up as a party leader and suspend members without letting the process take its course. So, but we are very clear, we're vehemently clear about the outcome. It wasn't as if we endorsed either Wike or Amechi, but we just don't want to be part of any shady arrangement between our party and the APC. We're very clear about the fact that the APC cannot take Nigeria to the promised land, and there was no reason for us to be in cahoot with APC in Rivers State, as it later turned out. So we're very clear about that. The leadership of the party is very clear. Our position has been made clear over time.
Are you going to take part in the next election cycle in Kogi State, Ondo State, I think, and Edo?
There's Edo, there's Kogi, there's Ondo State coming up in these elections. We are going to take them one after the other. So, you know, quite honestly, and I want to be very categorical about it, Nigerians must understand that except something drastic happens, we cannot have elections that are won on the basis of ideas. They have already destroyed the basis for any progressive politics with money, and people are backward. And that was part of what we were discussing throughout the election, that you cannot have a country where young people tell people who are brilliant, who have ideas, to go and run for councillor, while people with antiquated ideas are recommended to be presidential candidates. That's why the country is the way it is. But we will look at them. But I want to say, except a revolution happens in this country, the same way they had in Sudan or probably Algeria, it's going to be difficult, to have free and fair elections. And I'm saying it so that we don't have any illusion, that somehow if there is not a battle of wits, that the democratic space will open up good enough for us to have a country where good people, great ideas can rule the country of Nigeria.
Well, the performance by parties such as yours at the just concluded elections highlights points made by some analysts to say, these fringe parties are just a waste of time and they have no real significance. There were plans for a merger, but that also, failed at several times. Given hindsight, what would you have done differently?
There's nothing I would have done differently. The only thing I would have probably done differently was to make it clear from the session, to warn especially young people that they're selling their own future down the river by associating with those, because there are a lot of claims, especially made by the people you call analysts, that are not true. They're not. So
you didn't think that a formidable force from a merger?
We had a formidable force. What we didn't have is an electoral process that could allow any of those forces to interpret, to become something that is substantial enough to count. people voted, but there was the voting that took place at the polling units weren't the votes that were, eventually released as numbers and
so
figures.
why are you not challenging it?
We just don't have the capacity to go back to their own courtrooms, run by these people, and expect that you get justice from them. They own the courts, they own the judges, So that's why I said earlier that eventually something will give in this country.
No, but at the moment we have 776 petitions.
Yes.
We've been told 77 tribunals have been set up, and we have had cases in this country when judicial process post-election changed certain things about the main election itself and gave victory and tried to do justice.
But it's never
Are you saying you have no faith?
It has never happened at the presidential level. You understand? And what you see in Nigeria is what one lawyer friend of mine used to say, that you have to get two lawyers. The one that knows the judge and the one that knows the law. And most likely the one that will win the case for you is the one that knows the judge. So we're not in a position to hire two lawyers who know the judge and the law. What will become law eventually will be justice in this country, and that justice cannot emerge from the process. I've covered election petition tribunals extensively over 12 years. I think I've covered 3 election circles, and I know what the tribunals will do at the end of the day. You can't even find INEC. The tribunals are not even giving INEC the right kind of orders to provide paperwork for people who are challenging the elections. So the election tribunals are there to help judges make a lot of money, and they will make a lot of money from the election tribunals. We don't have that.
You are questioning the integrity of the judicial system.
No, there was
Without you saying so, I assume you already have a view on the Water Onogen case.
Oh, no, look, I do, and I made it clear during the election. I was the first to cover Onoge, where he was going to be Chief Justice of Nigeria, through Sahara reporters. We brought out information that he had money that he couldn't account for, but the EFCC down the street issued a statement against us saying that we lied. It was the same, documentation, the same information that was used to remove him when it was convenient to do so. So I do not have anything new to tell you about Onoge. Onoge's case is old story of Sahara reporters. Like maybe 2 years before he was eventually used as a cannon for the scapegoat.
No, but those who said, this was instigated ahead of the elections because of some funny business concerning the elections. And you've also talked about how this was not truly an election for you.
Yeah.
So you didn't think that there was anything wrong with the process and the outcome so far?
You mean regarding Onoge?
Yes.
Oh, I said it on national TV that they're doing it now because it's convenient for them and they want to use it to muzzle the judiciary. But that cannot also remove the fact that the judiciary had, bastardized itself by allowing people with questionable integrity to run the judicial system. There's nothing more dangerous than a compromised judge, overseeing the process of justice anywhere in the world. Judges are supposed to, have the best standards, have the best character and integrity. The moment the judge is compromised, justice is in danger.
Since we last met, there's been a lot of concern among Nigerians about the state of security in the country.
Yeah.
And the failure of government to deal with the issues of banditry and kidnapping and all of that. And also particularly police brutality.
Yes.
With special anti-robbery squad, special anti-cult squad. Now we have a police reform bill passed, sent to the president. Do you think when that bill becomes law, do you think it will change the face of the police?
No. Before anything can change in the country, you have to have a president reform bill. You have to reform the president. You have to reform the presidency. Otherwise you are wasting your time. The kind of ideas that are being bandied around to govern this country, they are the very low standard watery ideas that cannot even run counties in countries of other nations, in other nations around the world. So when we're saying a police reform bill, the police reform bill is not what the paper upon which it's written if you don't have people who are capable of policing the country. What I'm trying to say here is that I feel like Fela Kuti, when at the point he sang that song that if I sing, we say what I know, then I old Timby. That is nothing about what is happening now that I have not talked about. I spoke in Taraba that in front of over 120 policemen that the first thing I would do as president of Nigeria, if I had won the election, is to scrap SARS. There's no need for any special, homicide squads or killer squads in the Nigerian police. There was no need for it. You create all this, squads to create avenue for officers to oppress people or to make money. Or, they're better off. I mean, they're used to bring about a corrupt police and a deadly police force, and we didn't need that. With regards to banditry, we talked about it. I talked extensively about it. I also mentioned that, Boko Haram and banditry, all of it has become a business. And the moment it becomes a business, then it's very difficult to deal with. And that's where we are. In fact, I watched my way here 3 days ago, an interview granted by a person on Channels TV. And he was saying that he had 50 relatives who are in Boko Haram. And he said in, I think, Goza, there is a demarcation between the Nigerian army and Boko Haram. Boko Haram is on one side and the army is on the other side, and they don't attack each other. So, and that's a country in which you are told that, we are fighting Boko Haram, but there's a Boko Haram territory that the Nigerian government don't touch. He said it, and this has not been disputed. In fact, Garba Shehu was sitting next to this particular fellow in that interview. But these are things that we've spoken extensively about regarding Nigeria and the state of security in the country, or insecurity as you want to call it. These characters who are running our country today, our leaders of today, the politicians today, don't have the capability to run a country, in a safe manner. They don't have it. You give them another 20 years, they have nothing else to offer you. You're just wasting your time, or we're wasting our time.
Well, will you run again?
I'm constantly running. So,
will you run for president?
I would say that there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and I am not looking at the presidency of Nigeria from the point of what you wait for 4 years to run for. If we can take our country back tomorrow, I will be happier than waiting for another 4 years. But if it takes 4 years to get it right, you definitely hear from me again.
Well, thank you very much, Omoyele Sowore. And all the best with your next plans.
Thank you.
In politics.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's time now for a short break. On the